The field hospital was crowded with wounded soldiers from a dozen different species. Medical staff moved between beds in a constant flow of organized chaos. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the scent of fear and pain. Outside, artillery fire rumbled in the distance like distant thunder that never stopped. Talon stood beside Jiwon's bed, struggling to process what he was seeing. The demolitions expert's right arm was gone from the elbow down, wrapped in bandages that were already soaking through with blood. The injury had happened 3 days ago during a mission to destroy a Varkesh supply depot. A collapsing structure had trapped a squad of young Quellan soldiers. Jiwon had held the debris up long enough for them to escape, but the price had been his arm. "Stop looking so sad," Jiwon said, his voice rough but steady. "I still have one good arm. That is all I need to set charges." "You should be evacuated to a proper medical facility," Talon said. "Back to Coalition Central Command. Maybe even to Earth. You have done enough." Jiwon laughed, then winced as pain shot through his body. "Done enough? The war is not over, kid. Those Quellan soldiers are alive because I held up that wall. That is what we do. We hold things up so others can escape." In the bed next to him, Day was recovering from toxin exposure. He had treated a group of Coalition soldiers who had been infected with Varkesh spores. The spores were deadly to most species, requiring full isolation suits to handle safely. Day had worked for 8 straight hours treating patients. His suit had torn and spores had entered his bloodstream. He had nearly died. Now he sat propped up on pillows, reading reports on his datapad. His hands still trembled slightly from the toxin damage, but his eyes were clear. "You should be resting," Talon told him. "I am resting," Day replied without looking up. "I am sitting down, am I not? Besides, I need to review these medical protocols. 3 soldiers died yesterday from wounds that should have been treatable. The Coalition medical staff are good, but they do not have experience with Varkesh injuries. I am writing new treatment guidelines." Across the medical bay, Commander Hyun was arguing with a Coalition general. Talon could hear the raised voices even from a distance. "Your soldiers are falling apart," the general was saying. 2 of them are hospitalized. The rest are showing signs of exhaustion. This is exactly what I warned about when you first arrived. Old soldiers cannot maintain this pace. "My soldiers are exactly where they need to be," Hyun replied, his voice dangerously calm. "And they will continue fighting until the war is won. You are being unreasonable. I am ordering you to stand down. Take your team back to Earth. You have earned rest." "We did not come here to earn rest, General. We came here to win a war." The argument continued, but Talon stopped listening. He looked around the medical bay at the dozens of wounded soldiers. So many young people broken by this war, so many lives destroyed. And the humans, these elderly veterans who should have been living peaceful lives, were sacrificing themselves to save them. Rin approached, her arm in a sling from a recent injury. She had become one of Hyun's most dedicated students, learning tactics and strategy from the human commander. "The humans are being recalled," she said quietly. "Command is pulling them off the front lines." "Good," Talon said automatically. "They need rest." "They are not resting," Rin corrected. "They are refusing the order." Commander Hyun told the general that if they are recalled, they will resign from Coalition forces and fight as independent volunteers. The general is furious. Talon felt something cold settle in his stomach. They cannot do that. They will lose all support. No supplies, no backup, no medical evacuation rights. "I know," Rin said, "but they do not care. They said these young soldiers need them. They said they are not leaving until the war is over." That evening, Talon found Commander Hyun sitting alone outside the medical facility, looking up at the alien stars. The human commander looked older than usual. The lines on his face seemed deeper, the gray in his hair more pronounced. For the first time since they had met, Hyun looked tired. "Commander," Talon said quietly, sitting down beside him, "why are you doing this? Why not go home? You have proven yourself 100 times over. No one would think less of you for leaving." Hyun was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. "I had a grandson, young boy full of energy and dreams. He wanted to be a soldier like his grandfather. I told him it was a hard life. I told him about the sacrifice and pain. But he said he wanted to protect people. He wanted to make a difference." The human paused, pain crossing his face. "He died, training accident. Stupid preventable mistake. He was 19 years old." Hyun looked at Talon. "Every young soldier I see reminds me of him. Every kid who signs up wanting to be a hero. And I think about how many of them will die before they get the chance to live, before they have children of their own, before they learn what life is really about. So you came here to save them, Talon said. I came here because I am old. Hyun said simply. My life is mostly behind me. I have seen the world. I have loved and lost. I have had my time. These kids, these young soldiers from 100 different worlds, they have not had their time yet. If my life can buy them a chance to grow old, to have families, to see peace, then that is a trade I will make every single time. That is not fair to you, Talon said. Hyun smiled sadly. Fairness is not the point. Purpose is the point. I spent 40 years in military service, then 20 years in retirement. Do you know what I learned in those 20 years? That I did not know what to do with peace. I was built for war, shaped by conflict, and in peace I felt useless. When the coalition called for volunteers, I felt alive again. Not because I love fighting, because I finally had a purpose again. He looked back at the stars. All of us, the 6 who came here, we were the same. We had lived long lives. We had survived everything Earth threw at us, and we were bored, empty. Retirement was supposed to be reward, but it felt like being put on a shelf, like being told we had no value left to give. But you did have value, Talon said. You proved that. We proved that old soldiers still have worth, Hyun agreed. But more importantly, we found meaning again, purpose. Jiwon lost his arm, but he saved 6 young soldiers. That matters to him. That makes the sacrifice worthwhile. Day nearly died from toxin exposure, but he kept 30 soldiers alive who would have died otherwise. That gives him reason to wake up each day. Talon understood then. These humans were not here because they were suicidal. They were here because they had found something worth living for. And if necessary, something worth dying for. What happens now? Talon asked. The general is going to force you to leave. Let him try, Hyun said with a slight smile. We are Deathworld veterans, Officer Talon. We do not follow orders we disagree with. We do what needs to be done. The next morning, Command made their decision. The human veterans were officially recalled. They had 48 hours to report to the transport station for evacuation to Earth. The humans refused. Word spread through the coalition forces instantly. Soldiers began gathering outside the command center, protesting the decision. Units that had fought alongside the humans demanded they be allowed to stay. Even some junior officers spoke out, risking their careers to support the Deathworld veterans. The general who had ordered the recall found himself facing something he had not expected. A rebellion. Not violent, not aggressive, but absolute. Coalition soldiers from a dozen species stood together and said no. This is mutiny, the general shouted at a gathering of protesters. This is loyalty, a young Korthan soldier shouted back. The humans taught us how to fight, how to survive, how to win. And you want to send them away? We refuse. In the end, Coalition High Command made a compromise. The humans could stay, but they would be designated as advisors, not frontline combat troops. They would train others, plan missions, but not actively participate in the most dangerous operations. The humans accepted the terms, then proceeded to ignore them completely. When the next critical mission came down, Commander Hyun and his team volunteered. When Command refused, they simply showed up at the departure point with their gear. When ordered to stand down, they politely declined and boarded the transport anyway, and the young coalition soldiers, the ones they had trained and fought beside, followed them. Not because they were ordered to, because they chose to. Talon found himself caught between 2 worlds. His duty as an officer said he should report the humans for disobeying orders. His loyalty as a soldier said he should follow them into battle. In the end, loyalty won. It always did. As the transport lifted off toward the next war zone, Talon looked at the 6 humans. Jiwon with 1 arm. Day still weak from toxin exposure. Hyun showing his age more each day. Yoonji's limp getting slightly worse. Minyo moving more carefully than before. Byum's hands shaking from nerve damage. They were breaking down. The war was destroying them piece by piece. But they refused to stop. They refused to quit, because they had found their purpose again, and they would hold on to it until the very end. The war was approaching its final phase. Intelligence reported that one last massive battle would decide everything. The Varkesh were gathering every soldier they had for a final assault on Velkris Prime's capital city. If the city fell, the war was lost. If the coalition held, the Varkesh would be forced to negotiate peace. They looked at them as teachers, as leaders, as legends who had walked out of humanity's door. The next 3 weeks changed everything. Word spread through the coalition forces about the human veterans. At first it was just rumors, stories that seemed too incredible to be true. 6 elderly humans holding positions that entire platoons could not secure. Humans walking through conditions that required full environmental protection without breaking a sweat. Humans teaching combat techniques that turned failing units into effective fighting forces. Then the videos started circulating. Helmet camera footage from coalition soldiers who had fought alongside the humans. The evidence was undeniable. Commander Hyun and his team became legends. Coalition Command began sending them to the worst situations. When a position was about to fall, they sent the humans. When a rescue mission seemed impossible, they sent the humans. When elite units requested backup, they asked for the humans specifically. Talon found himself assigned as permanent liaison to the human team. What had started as him trying to protect them had become him learning from them. Every mission taught him something new about warfare, about survival, about what was possible when you refused to accept limitations. Today's mission was the most dangerous yet. 200 coalition prisoners of war were being held inside a Varkesh hive ship that had crashed in the northern wastes. Intelligence reported the ship was still partially functional, and the Varkesh were using it as a forward command base. The prisoners were being held in the lower decks, kept alive for reasons no one wanted to think about too carefully. Coalition Command called the rescue mission impossible. Expected survival rate was 0. They were prepared to write off the prisoners as lost. Then Commander Hyun volunteered his team. Absolutely not, the mission coordinator, a senior Korthan general named Vexthar, had said. 6 soldiers cannot infiltrate a hive ship. We would need a full assault force of at least 500 troops with air support and armor. Even then, casualties would be catastrophic. Then send 50 soldiers with us, Hyun had replied calmly. Give us the best you have. We will bring them all home. The general had looked at Hyun like he was insane. You are proposing to take 56 soldiers into a hive ship that contains at least 3,000 Varkesh? That is suicide. No, Minho had said quietly. That is a rescue mission. There is a difference. In the end, Command authorized the mission. Partly because they were desperate. Partly because the humans had not failed yet. And partly because 50 coalition volunteers stepped forward, wanting to serve alongside the Deathworld veterans. Talon was one of those volunteers. The hive ship loomed against the purple sky like a fallen god. It was massive. Easily 2 kilometers long, half buried in the frozen ground. Organic material had grown over the metal hull, making it look like a fusion of machine and living creature. Varkesh soldiers patrolled the exterior in organized patterns. The assault team landed 5 kilometers away and approached on foot. The terrain was nightmare material. Frozen methane lakes, crystalline formations that could slice through armor, and cold so extreme that exposed metal shattered if struck. The coalition soldiers struggled with every step. Their environmental suits kept them alive but barely. The humans, meanwhile, moved steadily forward. They had added extra layers to their armor but otherwise seemed unbothered by conditions that should have been lethal. How are you not freezing? Rin asked, her teeth chattering despite her suit's heating system. This is cold, they admitted, but manageable. Focus on your breathing. Keep moving. Your body will generate heat. Trust your equipment, but do not depend on it entirely. They reached the hive ship at dusk. Yoonji scouted the perimeter from a distance, her scope tracking patrol patterns. Biome analyzed the ship's energy signatures, mapping internal structures. Ji-won studied the hull, looking for structural weaknesses. Main entrance is heavily guarded, Yoonji reported. 60 Varkesh minimum, rotating in shifts. Secondary hatches are sealed from inside. Then we make our own entrance, Ji-won said, pointing to a section of hull that showed damage from the crash. There, the hull is cracked. I can widen it enough for entry. But it will make noise. How much noise? Hyun asked. Enough to alert everyone within half a kilometer. Hyun considered this. Then we make noise somewhere else first. Rin, you and 5 others will create a diversion at the main entrance. Draw their attention. The rest of us enter through G1's breach point. We will be slaughtered, Rin said, but her voice was steady. She had learned from the humans. Fear was acknowledged, not obeyed. You will not engage, Hyun clarified. You will make noise, make them think a large force is attacking. Then retreat. Draw them away from our entry point. Once we are inside, circle back and provide external support. The plan was insane. It required perfect timing, perfect coordination, and incredible luck. But the Coalition soldiers had learned to trust the humans. If Commander Hyun said it would work, it would work. The diversion began with explosions that lit up the twilight. Rin's team fired every weapon they had at the main entrance, creating a light show that suggested a force far larger than 6 soldiers. The Varkesh responded exactly as predicted, rushing toward the threat. Jiwan's charges blew a hole in the damaged hull section. The sound was swallowed by the larger explosions. The assault team poured through the breach into darkness that was almost absolute. The interior of the hive ship was worse than the exterior. The air was thick with spores that the Varkesh used for communication. The temperature was actually warmer, but the warmth came from decay and biological processes that made Talon's stomach churn. The walls pulsed like living tissue because they were living tissue. The Varkesh did not just occupy the ship. They had merged with it. Masks on, Hyun ordered quietly. Spores are toxic to most Coalition species. Breathe through filters only. The team moved through corridors that twisted in ways that defied logic. The Varkesh had restructured the interior, turning mechanical passages into organic tunnels. Navigation was a nightmare, but Biom had studied the ship's original schematics. The brig would have been in the lower engineering section. That way. He pointed down a passage that descended into deeper darkness. They encountered their first Varkesh patrol 10 minutes into the infiltration. 20 soldiers moving in perfect synchronization. The humans did not hesitate. The battle was silent and brutal. Energy weapons made noise, so the humans used blades and projectile weapons with suppressors. Coalition soldiers watched in horror and awe as the elderly humans moved through the Varkesh like shadows. Each motion was precise, practiced, lethal. No wasted energy. No unnecessary risks. In 30 seconds, all 20 Varkesh were dead. The humans continued forward without pausing. The pattern repeated. Encounter patrol, eliminate patrol, move forward. The Coalition soldiers began to understand a terrifying truth. The humans were not just good at combat. They were perfect at it. Decades of experience had refined every motion into pure efficiency. They reached the brig 40 minutes after entry. It was a massive chamber filled with cages made of bone and metal. Coalition prisoners huddled inside, looking more dead than alive. Some were injured. Others were sick from spore exposure. All were terrified. Get them out, Hyun ordered. Medical teams treat the worst cases here. Everyone who can walk prepare to move. Jiwan worked on the locks while Day and other medics began treating prisoners. The rescue was going too smoothly. Talon felt tension building in his spine. Something was wrong. Then alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The Varkesh knew they were there. They will seal the ship, Biom said urgently. Block all exits. Flood the passages with soldiers. We have maybe 5 minutes before we are trapped. Hyun turned to Minho. Get them out. Take the combat-capable soldiers and all the prisoners. Use the route we came in. What about you? Minho asked, already knowing the answer. We buy you time, Hyun said simply. He looked at Yoonji, Jiwon, Dae, and Beom. We hold them here as long as possible. I'm staying, Talon said immediately. Several other Coalition soldiers echoed him. No, Hyun said firmly. You get the prisoners to safety. That is the mission. The mission is bringing everyone home, Talon replied. You taught us that. So we stay and we fight. Together. Hyun looked at the young officer for a long moment, then nodded. Together. Minho led the main group out, half carrying wounded prisoners. The corridor behind them sealed as Varkesh began arriving in force. The remaining defenders, 15 Coalition soldiers and 5 humans, prepared for the worst fight of their lives. The Varkesh came in waves. Dozens at first, then hundreds. The defenders fell back step by step, using the tight corridors to negate the enemy's numbers. Coalition soldiers fought beside humans, learning in real time how to maximize every advantage. Yoonji positioned herself at a choke point and became death itself. Every shot killed. Every pause was calculated. She turned a corridor into a killing field that the Varkesh could not cross. Jiwan's explosives collapsed passages, channeling enemy movements into predictable patterns. He was not trying to kill them all. He was controlling the battlefield, forcing the enemy to fight on his terms. Day kept everyone alive, treating injuries under fire with hands that never shook. He talked calmly to wounded soldiers, keeping them focused and fighting when pain should have dropped them. Biom hacked into the SI. The night on Velcris Prime was worse than the day. The temperature dropped so fast that ice formed on the broken buildings within minutes. The toxic rain became toxic sleet, then toxic snow. The wind howled through the ruins with a sound like screaming. Inside their fortified position, the coalition soldiers huddled around portable heaters, shivering despite their environmental suits. The suits were designed for extreme conditions, but Velcris Prime pushed every system to its limits. The humans sat slightly apart from the main group. They had removed their helmets, breathing the filtered air inside the building without additional protection. Their armor was opened at the joints to release heat. They ate rations that looked unappetizing even by military standards, chewing slowly and methodically. Talon could not stop watching them. After what he had witnessed during the battle, everything he thought he knew about humans had been shattered. These were not fragile elderly beings who needed protection. They were weapons, honed by decades of surviving impossible conditions. He approached Commander Hyun, who was reviewing tactical data on a small display. The human looked up as Talon drew near. "Officer Talon," Hyun said. "Cannot sleep?" "No one can sleep here," Talon replied, gesturing at the howling storm outside. "How are you and your team so calm? This place should be killing you." "The temperature alone is about -15 degrees Celsius, Hyun finished. "Cold, yes, but I served in the northern mountains back on Earth. Winter operations where temperatures reached -40. We trained for weeks in those conditions with minimal equipment." He smiled slightly. "This is uncomfortable." "That was deadly." Talon sat down across from the human commander. "I need to understand. Command is asking for full reports on human combat capabilities. But more than that, I need to understand for myself. What happened today should not have been possible." Hyun considered this for a moment, then called over the rest of his team. They gathered around, bringing their rations and water. "Officer Talon wants to know how Deathworld veterans operate," Hyun said. "I think it is time we explain properly." Minho spoke first. "I grew up in the mountains. Small village, very remote. When I was 7 years old, a winter storm trapped us for 3 weeks. No power, no heat beyond what we could make with wood fires. Temperature outside was -30. My grandfather taught me how to survive. How to move in deep snow. How to find food when everything was frozen. How to stay warm when you have almost nothing." He paused. 6 people in our village died that winter. I learned that nature does not care about fairness. You adapt or you die, Yunji went next. I grew up during the resource wars. Food was scarce. My family lived in a city that was under siege for 4 months. No supplies coming in. We ate things you would not believe. We learned to hunt rats in the ruins. I got my first rifle when I was 12, made from pipe and spare parts. My father taught me to shoot, told me every bullet had to count because we could not waste any. She looked at her weathered hands. I learned patience. I learned to wait for the perfect shot. I learned that hesitation means death, but panic means death faster. Jiwan laughed, a rough sound. My story is different. I was military from age 18. Bomb disposal unit. Do you know what it is like to defuse explosive devices? You are looking at something designed to kill you, and you have to take it apart with shaking hands. One wrong move and you are scattered across a city block. He held up his hand, showing the missing finger. Lost this one on my 23rd mission. Lucky that was all I lost. I learned that fear is natural, but you cannot let it control you. You acknowledge it, then you do the work anyway. Day's turn came. His voice was softer than the others. I worked in hospitals during the plague years. 3 different pandemics in my lifetime. Diseases that killed millions. We did not have enough medicine, not enough equipment, not enough anything. I watched good people die because we could not save them all. He looked directly at Talon. I learned that you cannot save everyone. You make choices. You do what you can with what you have, and you never ever give up because the moment you stop trying is the moment more people die. Biom adjusted his glasses. I was intelligence service. Spent 20 years in information warfare. You think physical danger is hard? Try having enemies who attack your mind, your society, your culture. Try defending against threats you cannot see or touch. Try keeping a nation safe when the enemy is invisible. He smiled grimly. I learned that every piece of information matters. I learned to see patterns in chaos. I learned that the most dangerous weapon is not a gun but a lie, and truth is the best defense. Finally, Commander Hyun spoke. I commanded troops in 3 wars. Lost friends, lost soldiers under my command. Watched young people die following my orders. His voice was heavy with old pain. I learned that leadership means sacrifice. Not their sacrifice. Your sacrifice. You eat last, sleep last, take the dangerous position yourself. You earn respect through action, not words. And you never ask anyone to do something you would not do yourself. The building was quiet except for the storm outside. The coalition soldiers had stopped their own conversations and were listening. But that is just our individual stories. Yoon continued. You want to know about Earth? About what makes us different? He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the toxic storm. Earth is alive in a way your worlds are not. Our planet is constantly trying to kill us. Earthquakes that destroy cities in seconds. Volcanoes that bury entire regions. Hurricanes that flatten everything in their path. Tornadoes. Tsunamis. Floods. Droughts. Our atmosphere is more oxygen-rich than most coalition worlds, Minho added. Fires spread faster and burn hotter. Our weather systems are violent and unpredictable. Our seasons swing from extreme heat to extreme cold. Our diseases evolve alongside us, Day said. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, they adapt as fast as we create treatments. We live in constant biological warfare with microscopic enemies. Our gravity is 3 times Velcris Prime, Yoonji noted. Every step we take here feels light. Every weapon we lift feels like a toy. We have been training with weighted equipment our entire lives without knowing it. Ji-won grinned. And our predators? Oh, your worlds have dangerous animals, sure. But Earth has creatures that hunt in packs with intelligence. We have apex predators in the oceans that can swallow a human whole. We have insects that carry deadly diseases. We have reptiles with venom that stops your heart in minutes. We have bears that can rip apart vehicles. And despite all of this, Yun said quietly, we not only survived, we thrived. We built civilizations. We created art and music and literature. We reached for the stars. We did not let our world break us. We let it forge us. Talon felt something shift in his understanding. So when you came here to Velcris Prime, we came to a world that is difficult, yes, Hyun said. But we have seen difficult before. The Varkesh are dangerous, but we have fought dangerous enemies our entire evolution. The conditions are harsh, but we were born in harsh conditions. He turned to face Talon fully. This is not hell for us, officer. This is Tuesday. One of the younger coalition soldiers, a Quellan female named Rin, spoke up hesitantly. But you are old. How does that help? Would younger humans not be stronger, faster? Yoonji laughed. Stronger and faster, maybe. But we are smarter. We are more patient. We have seen every mistake that can be made because we survived making those mistakes when we were young. Combat is not about strength alone, Minho explained. It is about experience. Reading the battlefield, anticipating enemy movement, knowing when to push forward and when to pull back, understanding terrain, weather, psychology. These things come from decades of practice. Young soldiers are brave, Yun said, but old soldiers are careful. Bravery gets you killed. Careful keeps you alive. We are here because we learned to be careful. We learned which risks are worth taking and which are stupid. We learned to survive. Day smiled at the young coalition soldiers who were watching with wide eyes. You think we are here because we are suicidal old fools seeking glory before we die. The opposite is true. We are here because we want to live. We want to keep living. And we want to help you live too. Young people deserve to grow old. We know what that costs, and we are willing to pay it so you can have the chance we had. The building was silent for a long moment. Then squad leader Vex stood up and approached the human group. He placed one clawed hand over his heart in a gesture of deep respect. I called you primitive earlier, he said. I was wrong. You are not primitive. You are refined. Every one of you is a weapon that has been sharpened for decades. I would be honored to learn from you. One by one, the other coalition soldiers stood and repeated the gesture. Even the ones who had doubted. Even the ones who had thought the humans were a liability. Yun nodded slowly, accepting their respect. Then let us teach you. Because tomorrow we push forward. Command wants us to secure the next sector, and it will be worse than today. The Varkesh know we are here now. They will be ready. How do we prepare? Asked Rin, her voice small. You already started, Hyun said. You listened. You learned. You adapted. That is the Deathworld way. That is how you survive. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something had changed. The Coalition soldiers no longer looked at the humans as elderly strangers. The station's corridor lights flickered as another distant explosion shook the hull. Officer Talon Vross clutched his datapad tighter, his forearms trembling slightly as he read the deployment orders for the third time. This had to be a mistake. It simply had to be. The war against the Varkesh was going badly. Everyone knew it. 3 Coalition worlds had fallen in the past 6 months, and Velcris Prime was next. The Varkesh swarm consumed everything in their path, turning living beings into more soldiers for their hive mind. Talon had seen the casualty reports. 87% losses on the ground. Entire battalions disappeared within hours of landing, and now Command was sending reinforcements. 6 soldiers from Earth. Talon had never met a human before. Earth was one of those strange worlds on the outer rim, recently admitted to the Coalition. Class 12 Deathworld, according to the files. The classification alone should have kept them out of the war. Deathworlds were dangerous places where only the most desperate or stupid species evolved. Most Coalition citizens needed environmental suits just to visit such planets, but the ages on the manifest made him feel sick. 67, 71, 65, 63, 69, 68. These were not soldiers. These were elderly beings who should be resting in comfort somewhere safe, not being sent into a meat grinder. Talon's own species lived to be 200 years old, and anyone over 60 was considered barely past adolescence. But he had read enough about humans to know their lifespans were tragically short. Most lived only to 90 or 100 years if they were lucky. Command was sending senior citizens to die. Talon rushed to the hangar bay, hoping to stop this madness before it began. His supervisor, Commander Krill, would understand. Someone had clearly made a filing error. Perhaps these humans were trainers or advisors, not combat troops. Perhaps their ages had been entered incorrectly. The transport ship had already docked by the time Talon arrived. The hangar was busy with activity as supplies and equipment moved in organized chaos. Talon spotted the human group immediately. They stood apart from the flow of traffic, calm and quiet while everything around them buzzed with urgency. They looked so small. Humans were shorter than most Coalition species, and these particular humans seemed even more compact. Their faces had lines and creases that marked their age. Some had hair turned gray or white. One of them, a female, moved with a slight limp. Their equipment looked ancient. While Coalition soldiers wore sleek-powered armor with integrated shields and weapon systems, these humans carried what appeared to be mechanical rifles, actual projectile weapons that used chemical propellants. Their armor was thick and simple, painted in faded colors that might have once been camouflage patterns. Talon approached the group, his translator earpiece automatically adjusting to their language. "Excuse me," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "There has been a mistake. You should not be here." The tallest of the humans turned to face him. The man had gray hair cut very short, and a face that showed every one of his 67 years. His eyes were dark and calm, studying Talon without any apparent concern. "Commander Hyun," the man introduced himself. "No mistake, officer. We are exactly where we are supposed to be." "But you cannot fight," Talon said, gesturing at the group. "You are all too old. The conditions on Velcris Prime are extreme. The Varkesh will kill you within hours. This is not appropriate." Another human stepped forward, a man with a weathered face and arms that looked surprisingly strong despite his age. "Captain Minho," he said. "Officer, we appreciate your concern, but we did not come here by accident." "You do not understand," Talon insisted, his voice rising. "The casualty rate is 87%. Elite troops are being slaughtered down there. I cannot allow you to deploy. It would be murder." A female human with sharp eyes and steady hands spoke next. "Yunji, sniper class." She looked at Talon with something that might have been amusement. "Young one, we volunteered for this. We knew the numbers before we left Earth." "Then you are suicidal," Talon said flatly. He pulled out his datapad. "I am requesting an immediate meeting with Commander Krill. This deployment must be cancelled." The oldest-looking human, a man who moved carefully but deliberately, placed a hand on Talon's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly firm. "Day medical specialist. Officer Talon, is it? Listen to me for a moment." "How old are you?" 32 cycles, Talon answered, confused by the question. 32. "Still young for your people, yes? I'm 65 years old. On Earth, that means I have lived through 3 wars, 2 pandemics, and more natural disasters than I can count. I have treated wounded soldiers in conditions that would kill most coalition species instantly. I am here because I choose to be here. Another human, this one missing part of a finger on his left hand, grinned. G1. Demolitions. Kid, you think we are fragile because we are old. That is adorable. This is not a joke, Talon said, his antenna flattening against his head in frustration. I have seen the combat footage. The Varkesh tear through barricades like they are nothing. They fight in toxic environments that require full environmental suits. The temperature swings from freezing to boiling within hours. The terrain is... Commander Hyun held up one hand, silencing Talon with just a gesture. Officer, let me ask you something. What classification is your homeworld? Class 3, Talon answered. Standard temperate classification with balanced biosphere and minimal hostile fauna. Earth is Class 12, Hyun said quietly. Do you know what that means? It means your world is extremely dangerous, Talon said. High gravity, toxic atmosphere in some regions, extreme weather patterns, aggressive predator species, endemic diseases. It means we are born in hell, Hyun interrupted. Every single day of our lives from the moment we take our first breath, we are surviving conditions that would kill you. Earth's gravity is 3 times what you are used to. Our diseases evolve faster than we can create cures. Our weather systems can destroy cities in minutes. We have animals that hunt in packs and can kill a human with one bite. We have plants that are poisonous to touch. We have insects that carry diseases that have killed millions of us. The other human, a shorter man who had not yet spoken, added, and we are still here, still thriving, still building, still fighting. He nodded at Talon. Byum, communications and tactical analysis. Talon felt his certainty wavering. The human spoke with such calm confidence. There was no bravado, no false courage. They stated facts as if discussing the weather. Earth is a death world, Hyun continued, and we are Deathworld species. We did not come here to die, Officer Talon. We came here because we are the only ones who can survive what is coming. Your elite troops are elite on their worlds. Safe worlds, gentle worlds. They have never known real hardship. Minho stepped closer, his voice dropping. We are old, yes, but we are old because we survived. Every year we lived was earned. Every scar we carry taught us a lesson. We are not fragile elders who need protection. We are veterans who came out of retirement because soldiers like you need help. The hangar suddenly felt very quiet despite all the activity around them. Talon looked at each human in turn. Their eyes held something he recognized from the most experienced coalition warriors. That look of someone who had seen death many times and was no longer frightened by it. Commander Krill has cleared our deployment, Hyun said, pulling out his own data pad. We drop in 6 hours. You can file a complaint if you wish, but it will not change anything. We are going to Velcris Prime. Talon wanted to argue more. Every instinct told him this was wrong. But something in the way these humans carried themselves made him pause. They were not afraid. Despite their age, despite the odds, despite knowing they were walking into a slaughter, they were absolutely calm. I will be accompanying your unit, Talon said finally. If command will not stop this, then at least I can try to keep you alive. Yoonji laughed, a sharp sound that echoed in the hangar. Keep us alive, young officer? If you stay close to us, we might just keep you alive instead. The 6 humans picked up their gear and walked toward the deployment area. Talon watched them go, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. They moved with purpose, with certainty, with the absolute confidence of people who had done this 1,000 times before. Maybe, just maybe, he was the one who did not understand. The dropship shuddered violently as it entered Velcris Prime's atmosphere. Talon gripped his seat restraints, his stomach churning as the vessel bounced through turbulence. Around him, younger coalition soldiers looked terrified. Some were praying. Others were checking their weapons for the 10th time, hands shaking. The 6 humans sat perfectly still. Their eyes were closed, but Talon could tell they were not sleeping. They were preparing themselves mentally, going through whatever rituals helped them face death. Commander Hyun's lips moved silently. Dae's hands rested calmly on his medical pack. Yoonji's fingers drummed a slow, steady rhythm on her rifle. The dropship's pilot, a nervous Quellan, spoke through the intercom. 30 seconds to landing zone. Conditions are worse than predicted. Toxic storm moving in from the east, temperature dropping fast. Varkesh activity detected 3 kilometers from the landing site. Talon felt his heart's racing. 3 kilometers. That was nothing. The Varkesh could cover that distance in minutes if they wanted to. The landing zone was supposed to be secure, cleared by advance forces 2 days ago. Command had called it a safe staging area, but there was no such thing as safe on Velcris Prime. The ship hit the ground hard, and the rear hatch dropped open immediately. The smell hit Talon first. Sulfur and rot and something else, something organic and wrong. The air was thick with particles that made his environmental suit's filters work overtime. "Move, move, move," shouted the squad leader, a Korthan warrior named Vex. "Establish perimeter. Sensors up. Watch for movement." 20 coalition soldiers poured out of the dropship, spreading into defensive positions. The landscape was a nightmare. Broken buildings jutted from cracked earth like broken teeth. The sky was a sickly green color, choked with clouds that looked more like living things than water vapor. In the distance, fires burned despite the rain that fell in cold, acidic drops. The humans were the last to exit. They moved at their own pace, unhurried and methodical. Talon stayed close to them, still convinced they would need protection. Commander Hyun surveyed the area with calm eyes, then turned to his team. Standard sweep formation. Gyunji, high ground. Biom, establish communications. G1, map the structures for weak points. Minyo, take point. Day, stay central. I will coordinate. They moved into action without hesitation. Yunji immediately jogged toward a collapsed building that offered elevation, her limp barely noticeable. Biom pulled out equipment and began setting up a portable relay station. The others spread out with practiced efficiency. Talon noticed that squad leader Vex was watching the humans with obvious skepticism. The Korthan was a veteran himself, having survived 5 major engagements. He clearly did not appreciate elderly aliens telling his soldiers what to do. "Secure the perimeter first," Vex ordered, overriding Hyun's instructions. "Standard coalition formation. We are not using primitive tactics here." Hyun looked at Vex for a moment, then simply nodded. "As you wish, squad leader." The coalition soldiers formed up in the standard defensive pattern, a circular formation with overlapping fields of fire. It was textbook perfect, exactly what the training manuals recommended. Talon had studied this formation at the academy. It was designed to maximize firepower while maintaining mutual support. The formation lasted exactly 7 minutes. The Varkesh came from underground, erupting from tunnels that sensors had not detected. They came fast and in numbers that made Talon's blood freeze. Dozens of them, each one a twisted amalgamation of different species they had consumed and converted. Some had 4 legs, others had 6. Some had natural armor plating. Others had weapons grafted directly onto their bodies. The coalition soldiers opened fire, energy weapons lighting up the darkening sky. The Varkesh kept coming, absorbing hits that should have killed them. The circular formation, so perfect in theory, became a death trap. The Varkesh hit them from below and from angles the formation could not cover. Soldiers screamed. The line began to break. "Hold position," Vex shouted, but his voice carried panic now. "Call for support. We need air cover. Air support is 20 minutes out." Biom's voice cut through the chaos, calm and clear. "We do not have 20 minutes. Commander Hyun's voice came next, still calm but carrying absolute authority. "Coalition forces, collapse to the northwestern building. Move now, do not hold the circle." For a second, no one moved. The coalition soldiers had been trained to hold formation. Breaking it seemed like suicide. Then Minho appeared, moving through the chaos like it was a gentle breeze. His rifle barked steadily, each shot precise and deliberate. Unlike the coalition energy weapons that fired rapid pulses, his chemical projectile weapon fired slower, but each shot dropped a Varkesh instantly. He was not aiming for center mass like the coalition soldiers. He was targeting joints, sensory organs, structural weak points. "Follow him," Hyun shouted. "Wounded first, combat effective second. Leapfrog movement, go." Something in Hyun's voice made the coalition soldiers obey without thinking. They began moving toward the building, and suddenly the humans were everywhere, providing covering fire. Yunji was on the roof of a nearby structure, her ancient rifle cracking with steady rhythm. Each shot traveled through the toxic air and found a target. She was hitting Varkesh that other soldiers could not even see through the storm. One after another, threats disappeared before they could close distance. G1 was throwing something, small devices that bounced into clusters of Varkesh. Explosions followed, not large but perfectly placed. Tunnels collapsed. Varkesh were buried or redirected. He was controlling the battlefield with minimal resources. Day was pulling wounded soldiers to safety, seemingly unbothered by the plasma fire that streaked past his head. He moved wounded coalition troops with surprising strength, his old hands steady as he applied emergency medical procedures. Talon found himself following Hyun without conscious thought. The human commander moved through the battlefield reading it like a book. He called out orders that made sense only after Talon saw the results. He directed fire to specific points that seemed random, until Varkesh advances collapsed. The coalition forces made it to the building. It was partially destroyed, but the walls were thick and there were only a few entry points. A defensible position. Within minutes, the humans had organized the panicked soldiers into an actual defensive line. The Varkesh pressed the attack, but now they were funneled into kill zones. The coalition's superior firepower finally mattered. Bodies piled up at the entry points. The assault began to falter. Then the Varkesh did something unexpected. They stopped attacking and simply surrounded the building, waiting. "They are calling reinforcements," Bayom reported, studying his equipment. "I am detecting movement from multiple directions. Hundreds of them. They are going to overwhelm us with numbers." Squad leader Vex looked defeated. "We cannot hold against that many. We need immediate evacuation." "Evacuation is not available," Bayom said. "The storm has grounded all air support. We are alone for at least 2 hours." The coalition soldiers looked terrified. 2 hours might as well have been 2 years. They would be overrun long before help arrived. Commander Hyun walked to what remained of a window and studied the surrounding area.
"Minho, what do you see?"
The captain joined him, looking out at the Varkesh forces that were assembling in the ruins. Old industrial sector. Chemical processing by the look of it. Pipes still intact in places. Storage tanks mostly collapsed, but some might have residue. "Jiwon?" Hyun asked. The demolitions expert grinned. "Give me 30 minutes and I can turn this whole sector into a fireworks show." "You have 20 minutes, Hyun said. "Yoonji, provide cover. Boom, map the safest route. Day, prepare for casualties. Minho, you and I will draw their attention." "Wait," Vex said. "What are you planning?" "We are going to make them chase us," Hyun said simply. "And then we are going to make them regret it." What followed was something Talon would never forget. Hyun and Minho simply walked out of the building, rifles ready, and opened fire on the Varkesh. Not from cover. Not from defensive positions. They walked into the open and challenged the enemy directly. The Varkesh took the bait immediately, rushing toward the two humans. But Hyun and Minho were already moving, leading the enemy on a specific path through the ruins. Yoonji's rifle sang from above, picking off any Varkesh that tried to flank. The aliens followed the humans like predators chasing prey, except the humans were not prey. 20 minutes later, Jiwon's demolitions turned an entire section of the industrial zone into an inferno. The explosion was so large that Talon felt the shockwave even inside the building. Fire and twisted metal consumed hundreds of Varkesh in seconds. The survivors retreated in disarray. When Hyun and Minho returned, they were not even breathing hard. Minho had a small cut on his arm. That was the only injury between them. The coalition soldiers stared at the two elderly humans in complete disbelief. They had just done something that should have been impossible. Squad leader Vex approached Commander Hyun slowly. "I apologize," he said quietly. "I underestimated you." Hyun nodded once. "Many do. Now let us secure this position properly before they return." As the soldiers worked to fortify their position, Talon stood next to Day, who was cleaning his medical equipment. "How?" Talon asked simply. Day smiled. "We are from Earth, young one. Every day there is a battle. We simply learn to win them.